Well, celebrating heroes from the era of the Underground Railroad to contemporary times, the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center has been visited by more than 1.3 million people. We took a field trip inside to see their permanent and traveling exhibits.
My name is Christopher Miller. I am the Senior Director of Education and Community Engagement at the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center here in Cincinnati, Ohio, right here on the banks of the Ohio River. We are in the Grand Hall, which is on the second floor of our building. The design of our building is very intentional. You will also notice our circle staircase as well as the winding walls. And that is to represent the journey, traveling over rivers and waterways, as well as lands, valleys, and hills that freedom seekers would take in search of freedom. Behind us, you will have a Raggedon. We don't call it a quilt, actually. It's a Raggedon. The artist Amina Brendolyn Robinson calls it a Raggedon because she pieced it together with rags, and they tell stories that go on and on and on. One that is very, very important to Ohio's history because the artist is from Columbus, Ohio, so she is an Ohio native, and she's very knowledgeable about Ohio history. Ohio was the first state in the Northwest Territory, meaning that what we call the Midwest, Ohio was the very first state to be admitted to the Union in 1803. There was some divisive legislation that took place in 1804, the very first piece of legislation, and those were the Black Codes. And so if you look up on the Raggedon, I would say, you will actually see a portion of the Raggedon that is dedicated to that legislation. A different set of laws, a different set of standards. This is the John W. Anderson slave pen. It was built around the early 1830s, and so this structure was found about 60 miles from where we are now located, outside Augusta, Kentucky, and it was inside a much larger barn, which actually preserved it from the elements for many years. But our senior historian, Carl Westmoreland, was one of the first individuals from our institution to go out to the structure, and he knew immediately when he saw it that it was a slave jail or a slave pen. Approximately about 85% of this structure of what you see is very much authentic, meaning when you place your hand upon that wood, you are putting your hand where someone may have rested their hand or their head, someone who was enslaved that was brought here. This symbolizes not only the economics of slavery, but also the social impact of families being separated. Mothers from their children, fathers from their families, brothers from sisters. And this was part of the norm, during this time period when we talk about enslavement. And so for thousands of people, this area was the gateway to freedom. So it's very fitting and very significant, very appropriate that we are now situated in this location right here on the banks of the Ohio River in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so there is only one National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, and it's right here in Cincinnati.